Welcome back to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, our series of reboot doing interviews to the community. We help military, veterans, and first responders transform their lives from the bedroom to the boardroom. Some bedrooms and boardrooms are a little bigger, like we're seeing in the back in the castle, and we brought out the big castle for a big name today. In the superhero battle room is Maria Jefferson. She is an Army mil spouse. We have very few mil spouses and patriots on, but we saw that as an honor that she's going to serve us with her skills of counseling and bringing holistic renewal to her tribe. So she's going to share her transformational story from a mil spouse to a vet spouse and now serving the community at large. So we're going to bring her on the stage and we're going to get this party started. Hey, Maria, do I have you?
Hi, yes, I'm here, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, awesome. Beautiful background, more realistic than mine, but we will see how the inspiration goes over with the questions. So let's get started with what inspired you to join the military family? Because as a mil spouse and vet spouse, you marry into it. You don't just go enlist into it.
Right. Um, so my husband and I met in high school, and we both graduated the same year. And I went off to college, and he went into the army. He went straight into being 11 Bravo infantry, and so we started dating in high school, and we continued our relationship for about 4 years. Within in between those 4 years, my mom had passed away from cancer. And in 1999, she passed away in 97, but in 1999, my husband asked me to marry him. He was um, stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And it was something so spontaneous and impulsive. We were both 22 years old. And at that time, which is very common for military, to
Yeah.
get married so young. And I had no idea. I was not raised in the military life at all. So I had no idea what I was really getting into. And I was just like, yeah, my mom had passed away, and I was like, I have nothing else left. So why not? And within 3 months, I left my job. I packed up all my stuff and I moved to Clarksville, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing because you're one of the few that, I mean, because we're in the same generation, not many people are getting married in their teens and their 20s anymore. Most people are getting in their 30s or 40s or sometimes cohabitating for years and decades. So you going over being high school sweethearts and then going over and getting married and joining that is an anomaly nowadays. So
Yes,
so we're going to talk a little bit about a side question I want to go into before we get into the vet spouse
of course.
transformation. So you've been married from 99 to 2024. So roughly about 25 years. So how is marriage in the military looking for you?
Yeah, we've actually been married for 24 years. We just celebrated our 24th anniversary. So we married in 2000. And I tell you, it's been quite the journey. Um, and but I wouldn't change anything. Marrying into the army life and becoming an infantry wife. I credit God for this because I really don't know where I got the skills to be an effective army wife. When I married my husband, he was very clear that he was an army soldier, he was an infantryman. This will be his career for 20 plus years. And that came first. So, it was quite the transition. And we saw many of our friends end up in divorce, unfortunately, because it is a very difficult role to be a supportive spouse.
I would say the least, especially with that particular line. It's like, because I've heard that several times. It's like my career comes first. And I literally saw when I was in Korea, guy was in 11 years. He finally got an assignment to England. And the wife said to him, it's like, if you go to England, I'm going to divorce you. He's like, well, let's start the paperwork now. And he went through the process. He went to England and she didn't follow. So I heard that was a pretty common thread that I'm not saying all male spouses, but I'm saying it's a common thread. I heard that male spouses would be like, here's the line I'm going to toe, but this is how far I'm going to toe. And it's sometimes an unspoken expectation. That one was a spoken expectation.
Right,
And literally, that thread got weaved and then it broke the thread.
right.
So you going over and serving 20 plus years with being a male spouse is commendable and continue to serve because we're going to now transition to the vet spouse transformation. So when did he get out and when did you start making that transformation to vet spouse?
Sure. So he got out he ETS'd in 2003, which is the same year that he was deployed to Iraq. He left to Iraq March 7th of 2003. And we, at that time, had our oldest daughter. She was 18 months old. And um, I didn't hear from him for 3 months. That was the beginning of the war. And all communications, all mail had been stopped. And in 2003, that was the year that he was scheduled to renew his contract and reenlist. Um, and, there's so much more as to the reasons why he ended up getting out of the Army. And I typically like to leave that story for him to tell. But for me as the spouse, he being in Iraq, me being alone in Clarksville, Tennessee, with just my daughter, yeah, we had friends, but I did not have family out there. And so it was very challenging watching MSNBC every single night um, to determine where he was. And so I would look for where was the 101st, battalion, or and where he was potentially. And that's how I knew, okay, so they're moving from here to there. Okay, now
Mhm.
they're there. And that was very challenging. And getting a knock on the door, um, it it was one of the most traumatic experiences that many people may not even assimilate how a knock on the door or someone ringing the doorbell can make your heart just drop to your stomach. But that was my life. And so he was in Iraq for 6 months. And during that time, he made a decision to not renew and his contract and reenlist. And he came back in September of 2003 from Iraq. And it was early on where the military was not really big on mental health. When he arrived, it was very much the only three questions he was asked was, do you feel like harming yourself? No. Do you feel like harming your wife? No. Do you feel like harming your children? No. Thank you for your service. And that was it. And in a matter of just a couple months, in November, towards the end of November, we moved back to Connecticut. And it was when I began real life with a husband who was not the same husband who left to Iraq. And getting mental health treatment was not a thing at that time. It was not a requirement. It was not encouraged. And there were no assessments that he received. So coming back to the civilian world was very much a challenging transition, not just for him being post combat exposure veteran, but also for me not having anyone to possibly support me or even help me, guide me into knowing how to understand what he was going through and how to be supportive to him. So that was very challenging. And by the grace of God, we're still married because we had from 2004, well, starting in 2004, we had 6 separations in 6 years and 2 failed attempts at divorce. And then after the second one, we finally gave up on the attempts. So, he finally 12 years later, he finally went to VA and um, began receiving the services that he deserved to receive. Um, and that has been very instrumental in the progress that we have been able to make um, as husband and wife, as the wife of a veteran, and as the husband of a army veteran wife who his PTSD um, caused me secondary PTSD.
Mhm.
And I often like to talk about that because, which is why I let his story to be told by him. But
Yeah.
I am really big on talking about my own experience with uh, secondary PTSD because of his, because I have found throughout the years and even my own experience attempting to seek help from VA to know how to help him was an unsuccessful journey for me. And so I use my story as a way to raise awareness that we too, military spouses, we too suffer. And so do the children when we do not receive adequate support.
I would agree with that 100%. You basically just talked about the epidemic that has gone because of the pandemic, but there was been a VA epidemic
Yeah.
since 2003, and it took until the past few years of PACT Act and mental health focus and everything else. It's like the unfortunate part, you were just in the beginning stages of
Yeah.
people coming back, and you had to experience secondary trauma from basically 2003, him coming back, four-ish, until the VA caught up itself. So
Yes.
there could be a lot of mil spouses and vet spouses that are seriously secondarily damaged
Yes.
because of waiting for the VA to catch up in
Yes.
that particular regard. And it takes a really humble wife and husband, either or mixed, no matter what, if it's a veteran or male spouse, to both to seek out and to continue to seek out.
Correct.
I've heard veterans, like most of them, it's one or two services or two types of helps, and then they usually give up. So they will give up on the VA or the service or counseling, usually in one or two attempts. So that is our heart, and our goal is to minimize that in giving the information out there that there's resources out there, because I think even the resource behind you is probably created as a legacy of love. Is that resource the living legacy of trauma? Is
Yeah.
that your resource?
Yes. Absolutely. So I am um, a trauma. I specialize in the treatment of trauma, complex PTSD, and so I'm EMDR trained. I'm also I specialize in couples therapy and helping couples better learn better tools and skills on how to have healthier relationships. And so my own experience with trauma and EMDR treatment is what really inspired me to get trained and really um, get into a line of work where I'm able to teach individuals how to better understand their brain and what happens when someone is exposed to trauma, including the secondary trauma, and it was very challenging. And again, and I always credit God because, you know, the judgment when the civilian world does not understand what the spouse is going through or experiencing because of their vet or soldier, having mental health challenges because of their combat theater exposure. Um, there's a lot of shame that can come from that judgment of, well, why are you still with him? And I always tell the story that my faith in God is what kept me in my marriage, but also because I knew my husband before Iraq. I knew who he was.
I would say that's huge with trauma because in a moment it changes the identity on the outside. And if you just look at the outside and you don't know the person on the inside, that's basically like fighting in a steel cage to get out from that prison.
Yes.
Speaking,
Yes.
you're going to go over and tend to divorce. And when marriage is not built in decades instead of years, and marriage is not built for the last day and it's built for the first day, then you're going to go over and struggle immensely more. And with that, you talked about your transition. You like led into the question. So we now a little further ahead, and that's awesome. I love when conversations go and I just let it flow. But what made you pivot to serve the community? Was it primarily helping your husband, is that, or was it start there and then it became a bigger calling? Just wanted to hear a little bit about how that pivot happened.
So prior to becoming a therapist, I was a Spanish interpreter. That was my career for 20 plus years. And through that journey, I mean, and it just happened. Like one day I was driving to one of the courthouses that I was assigned to go interpret. And I saw this big billboard that was announcing or, marketing a counseling program. And I just instantly heard God say, you need to sign up. And not even knowing what what my life would really become, and the calling that I had on my life to serve as a mental health provider, to work with individuals, to work with couples, to work with law enforcement, to work with military families, to work with urban communities, and to really dedicate my work to the treatment of trauma and raising that awareness to destigmatize um, these biases and core beliefs that only crazy people take medication or only crazy people seek therapy. No, we all need it. We all need a safe space to talk to someone. And so, my husband and my own experiences with being his wife was also an inspiration. And to some degree, it's like I wanted to learn more how to help myself and how to help him and how to, hold him accountable, because accountability is huge. But to also utilize those skills to do the same for others. And so, um, My practice, Purpose Path Counseling Services, was something God gave me. And this is my ministry where through therapeutic, services, as well as coaching, because I also do coaching and consulting, you know, it God works through me because it's not me. I always say it's not really me. It's just God working through me to help other individuals learn to heal.
That's really cool because a lot of people go over and they just either they really jump into it right when it happens or nothing happens at all. And you literally were doing Spanish interpretation and getting paid for this. And then a billboard literally hit you just like that. So people that do billboards, you think they don't minister to
I know,
people.
right?
They do. They
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So advertisement does work. So enough times you go get hit because the average, they say it's about 10 to 100,000 eyeballs that are on a billboard. Sometimes it's millions, and you only get like a small percentage. But hey, it's an advertisement that worked that transformed your life, and now you're transforming others with that. And you're serving the community because literally a billboard inspired you through God. And when you're now in the midst, because I've been done a little bit of everything. And I think there's certain pros and cons, but I used to work in mental health and there's pressures, compassion fatigue,
Oh,
things of that nature, clients that are frustrating. You go have a ton, and then it's like if insurance doesn't work, you're not getting proper billed and everything else, or clients dropping off too early, or even sometimes I've had some clients that literally they were doing well for a while and then they dropped off. And unfortunately, the worst case is that they are in a different place. We'll just call it that because we're on social media.
right.
So when those pressures come, either passively or actively, and tough times come, what is your secret fuel for keeping going?
God, my intimate and personal relationship with God, my daily connection to Him. I always start my day with prayer, listening to something motivational, and I pray for my practice. I pray for myself. A covering over my own emotional health, my spirit, my mind, and I pray for my clients. But my daily prayer, it has always been, God, bring the individuals to the practice that you need me to help. And I've had my practice now for over 3 years, and it's always been that way. There's always this person that I know God is who brought this person. And there are some clients who um they stay the course. Trauma treatment is not a easy fix, and you come to 2 sessions and then now you're totally healed. That's not how it works. It takes several years. My own trauma and EMDR treatment for my complex PTSD took 3 years of intensive treatment. And so I am really big also on self care. I do not overextend myself. I have built very strong boundaries. And if God is not leading me in that direction, I don't go. So I'm really, um, I'm really cautious each and every day with what I listen to, what I surround myself with, um, and being super mindful of the prompting of the Holy Spirit.
That's unique to hear in counseling in that particular regard. It's like most people just go and they have their routines or they choose their therapies and they go over and go. So you're seeking a divine power to go over and to
Yeah.
make your decisions, from the prompting of the billboard to the prompting of this podcast to the prompting of everything else. And I think that's huge as a secret fuel, because when we secret fuel into ourselves, sometimes we win and sometimes we lose when we listen to a divine power of God, the Holy Spirit, wherever it comes from. We personally believe in a Christian faith, but we don't force it upon anybody. But when you go over and listen to that, either through general revelation or specific revelation, things always go better. And even if trials come, he's there. So that's beautiful to go over and hear. And now we're going to go into the tactics. So now you can go into a little more specifics on why, either with yourself in the past or anything else, on 3 superhero tactics you either give your clients to go from surviving to thriving, or maybe looking at yourself when it was 2003, and what would you tell yourself when you were in the midst of PTSD, secondary PTSD, and just the struggle of staying married. So whatever perspective you want to do in those 3 superhero tactics.
So I'll just kind of blend it all, because the foundation of everything, and the the number one, thing that took me from surviving to thriving is my faith in God. And my own, working on my own spirituality, and being led by that. And what would I tell myself, to my younger version in 2003, prior to the transition back to Connecticut, would be, it's going to be okay. You're going to survive it. And the journey that you're going to be brought through is going to be used for a purpose that is way bigger than what you are experiencing right now. And so my own trauma and EMDR treatment, as I mentioned earlier, also played a huge role in me learning how to allow myself and give myself permission to heal and to learn the strategies that work for me, for Maria. When I'm working with clients, I may teach them strategies and skills, and it might not work for them specifically. And then we go back to the drawing board. And I am very big on offering a safe space and normalizing the journey of, this is going to be a very difficult journey for you, but it will so be worth it. And if you just stay the course, you're going to one day wake up and you're going to feel completely different. You're going to think completely different. And you're going to be able to utilize that resiliency to continue to face life's obstacles. Because we're, like you mentioned, we're not free from, facing obstacles in life. And so resiliency is really my third tactic. And tapping into that resilience that I was able to truly develop from the healing journey. And that is what helps me confront any life obstacle that comes my way.
I think that's huge. I think that's a lesson we can learn in multiple different modalities. And I think of it as this, is you're basically saying this: we have a $1 million moment society wants to go from nothing to million all in a shot. The Powerball came out a little while ago, 292 million chance to go over and get that. Got to like 1.1 billion. The average billionaire on the lottery is usually broke within 5 years.
Absolutely.
So we need to be looking at, and either one's not wrong, it's how you steward it. But I think we need more of a penny a day and doubling. If you've ever seen it, it is, if you had a penny a day and it doubled every day for 30 days, or I gave you $1 million in a shot, you're going to make more incrementally a penny a day that goes over and doubles, because in 30 days, that's 5.3 million approximately. So resiliency is looking at that. Like, I'm going to one session, I'm not seeing much. Well, you've only invested in a penny. it
right,
needs to double. And then it
right,
needs to double and double and double again. And over time,
right.
when you reflect back, you're a millionaire in transformation.
Exactly, exactly. And that's such a great analogy that, you just offered, the viewers and listeners, um, because it's true. It's just one day at a time. And I'm constantly reminding my clients, and even from day one, my disclosure to my clients at intake is always, I am not everyone's cup of tea when it comes to a therapist, um, because I'm not a good fit for just anyone. But the right fit will always be, working with me. And I also share the realities of how difficult the process and the journey is, to work through our own traumas. And um, I always compare it to the onion. That the therapeutic process is just like an onion, where we're peeling back all of these layers, and there will be times where it will be so difficult and so challenging, and that it's going to feel, whew, it's going to feel good, it's going to feel amazing. And then there's going to be, a period of time where it's going to be chill, the crisis has, decreased. And then suddenly, boom, something else happens in their life, and it triggers something else that is part of their complex trauma that they were not really aware before, or that they thought that they had really overcome it and really healed it. And now we go into, okay, so this is coming up now. Why is it coming up? What else is still, what roots are still there that we need to focus on now? Because maybe 6 months ago, you were in a place where your life crises were so intense that you would not have been able to now work on this area the way that you will be able to, because you've become stronger. And I have some clients that have been with me since day one, where I often remind them this is just part of the journey. And every single setback that you feel you have, don't allow your negative thoughts of, I messed up, you know, I am really not doing any better. Allow yourself to be self compassionate and self inspiring and self empowering, with thoughts of, this setback is just a reminder that there are things that I still need to work on, but I have some tools now in my toolbox that I will be able to use. And my resiliency is getting stronger and stronger each and every day. So I'm able to overcome these obstacles a lot quicker than what I was able to before.
And that is the beautiful part about going over and getting counseling and things of that nature. So, Maria, I want to thank you for your time and for the blessing
So
of
much.
information. Many onion layers. People are going to have to strip off this podcast. So, I'm going to give you one final shout out on the floor if you want to promote any services or workshops, and then close us out with maybe a quote or a saying you have, and then I'm going to fade to credits.
Yes. So thank you for having me on, Daniel. I really appreciate the invitation and this safe space to be able to share a little bit more about my story and the work that I do in serving the communities that I serve. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at Try the Purpose Project. Um, and I'm also on LinkedIn. I have currently a retreat in 2025, that 5-day retreat that I have organized. in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. That is on my website, www.purposepathct.com, where people can pre-register for that. It will be an amazing, amazing, amazing transformative experience. And I'm here to help anyone that is seeking mental health therapy or coaching. I'm also available for that. And a quote that I really do, that I often say, and it's on my signature line in my email, and it is, when you heal your inner child, you glow differently.